Welcome to Straight Talking Cyber, and this week we're looking at a variety of things, including Apple is about to release iOS 15.4. We'll be taking a good look at that. What's the difference between misinformation and disinformation, and how important is this now with the Ukraine-Russia situation? We've been investigating Lapsus, which is a supposedly relatively new and fairly successful extortion group. Going to see about how you can reset all the things when you're selling anything for privacy purposes, and taking also a look at Wordle, in fact the Wordle clones, and just how private they are.
So this week we had the announcement of iOS 15.4. Finally, we've got a date of when it's going to arrive, which is it will arrive by Friday of next week. This came out with the new green iPhone, which is also coming on that day. It will come preloaded with 15.4, which is pretty cool because it's got a lot of new security features coming.
So go on then, tell us what these features that we need to know about are.
Right, well, there's three, say, headline features that affect our security anyway. First one is Face ID while wearing a mask. Face ID is going to work while we're wearing a mask. So we'll be able to open our phone when we're out and about without using the Apple Watch to pay for things. So this is really kind of an update on the functionality side. It's a bit late and it's not going to be as secure as Face ID, but it is very convenient and it is still fairly secure, hopefully. We'll see everyone trying to crack it when it comes out, but that will be for next time. So that's the first feature. Two other features are updates to the iCloud keychain. Now, as we know, keychain is behind the kind of mainstream password managers like 1Password because it doesn't include as many features as these other password managers. Obviously, it's not functional across devices as well, but that's, you know, for a side. Two main features are, first of all, you can add notes to passwords. So you can put things like PIN numbers, security questions in with your passwords. And the second, another update that makes this just easier to use, more convenient, is when you're browsing, you're setting up passwords for different websites, it now makes you save the username for the new password that you have created by default. So no more going onto the website, filling with your keychain and saying, what was my username, and not being able to get in. So all good on the Apple front, quite exciting.
All good stuff. And talking about updates, I finally got round to updating my PlayStation 4 Pro games console, which has been sitting here doing nothing for a few months because I actually got a PS5 a while back. And of course, being who I am and good at these things, well, supposedly, I make sure that I factory reset it before I passed it on to somebody else, so that none of my existing data was either there or they were able to get hold of it. And this was a bit problematical on the PlayStation because Sony make you jump through an awful lot of hoops. And eventually you can get to do something which is called a full initialization of the PlayStation console, which I did. And it took 3.5 hours to do.
No.
But this made me think, you know, how easy is it to factory reset all the things? You know, not just game consoles or all game consoles, but your laptop, your desktop computer, your smart assistants, smartphones, you name it. How easy is it to do these things? Because it's very important that we do reset them for privacy purposes before we sell them on or even dispose of them. So I've been taking a look, and I'm going to write a report up that is full of helpful advice and links to step-by-step instructions for everything.
This is a real thing. I mean, even with Macs, which, you know, Apple tries to make things easy. Apart from that, you know, trying to actually, you know, set your MacBook or your iMac or whatever up for resale is actually ridiculously difficult. It must happen to almost every device that's shipped in some way, shape, or form. Surely there can be just a click once, put in your password, click again, get it done, and they can script it behind the scenes. It seems crazy in 2022 that you've got to jump through hoops to do something that basic. Something
else that seems crazy at the moment is the last couple of weeks we've been hearing about a cybercrime gang called Lapsus $. So I'm just going to call them Lapsus because it's silly saying $. And they've sort of sprung to attention and got the headlines of late. First with NVIDIA, the graphics people. At first it was thought it was some sort of ransomware attack, which it doesn't appear to be. They managed to steal source code essentially from NVIDIA. And the demands were peculiar, to say the least. One of which, and the main one that was getting written about, was that they wanted, they said they'd sell this source code on and distribute it unless NVIDIA gave them a key to unlock the cryptocurrency mining throttling on graphics cards, which of course NVIDIA said they weren't going to do. And now, just this last couple of days, I've been watching conversations between members of this gang, and there's something of a disagreement going on with people being booted out and doxed. And one of the things that this is about is that one of them apparently tried to get $10 million out of NVIDIA. And then you might also have heard of Lapsus, because last week I wrote about how they'd also managed to breach Samsung's security and got the source 190 gigabytes of source code to Samsung Galaxy devices, including biometric authentication codes and or processes. It's sort of quite serious stuff. So it made me wonder, who is this group? Who are they? Who's Lapsus? And there's not a great deal known about them. So I've been working with a couple of threat intel agencies to dig into some background and find out exactly who they are. And this is quite important because a lot of people are saying, well, are they Russian? Is this involved with the Russia-Ukraine conflict? And all I'll say at the minute before I do this report, which you can read at the weekend, hopefully, is that no, it doesn't look like they're Russian at all. Best guess is they're Portuguese or South American, because they started off by attacking the Brazilian health ministry and a lot of Portuguese language stuff. And indeed, in this doxing messaging that I've been talking about, there were some redacted phone numbers, and those phone numbers were Portuguese country codes. But it also looks like they're not actually a smart bunch of cookies either. My best guess is that they are script kiddies, bunch of cowboys, very amateurish, and I'll explain why in my report.
And where are they having these conversations? So they're having kind of these online arguments, are they, on forums or?
On cybercrime forums, in their own dark website, etc., which of course the good guys have got certain access to as well.
So there might be quite a lot of cyber warfare activity going on beyond the new ransomware group via Russia, Ukraine, and the big conflict that's going on at the moment. We don't really know much. There's quite a lot of talk, isn't there, without any evidence to actual attacks, and whether they're happening in the background, we really don't know.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful about calling it cyber warfare. I don't think there's any evidence at all at the minute that there's any real cyber warfare happening. That would be something of a Pandora's box if that were to be opened. But there will be cyber attacks going on. But again, I mean, I called Lapsus amateurs, and most of what I've seen at the minute that we know about seems to be, again, amateurs who are trying to get involved in this on both sides to do certain attacks. I don't think there's been any particular emphasis on trying to attack critical national infrastructure in the Ukraine, certainly not that we've heard about. I've heard nothing through the various intelligence feeds to suggest there has been, and quite likely that's because CNI, critical national infrastructure, defences are generally pretty good, and certainly during times of war, which is what this is, they're going to be even better. You know, they're going to be looking for that. But the real thing here is, the real issue is, we don't know what's going on. There's very little intelligence coming out to suggest anything one way or the other. And most of the stuff that we are seeing can either be labelled as misinformation or disinformation. And I think it's probably a good idea that we discuss what the differences are between those things.
The Ukraine conflict has played out in the public domain on mainstream media and social media more so than any conflict we've probably seen, just given the nature of the population in Ukraine. And I think that has thrown up all the misinformation, disinformation thing, but also, just as we've seen the kinetic battle, you know, front and center, I think it's good to try and take a check and think about from a cyber perspective what might be happening. Clearly it's going on. Obviously it's going on because it will have to. I mean, the interesting thing with you know, cyber attacks, cyber weapons, call it what you will, is it does give the opportunity for people who aren't, you know, publicly or obviously involved in a conflict to participate. We've seen that oftentimes in the Middle East and Asia and elsewhere. And you can start to think of, you know, on the Ukrainian side, it might be critical infrastructure. On the Russian side, it will be command and control. It will be command and control systems. It will be chaos. It will be, you know, and you assume there's stuff going on you wouldn't know. Russians clearly not going to be talking about it. There'd be no evidence about it publicly, but you can see there's clearly chaos in Ukraine at the moment. What we can see is kind of the information war. But I think, and we do need to kind of differentiate between the various terms. But I think the other thing which is really interesting is we saw 2-3 years ago, you know, Putin make efforts to try and disconnect Russia from the World Wide Web, to try and work out what Russia would look like in isolation. Strong support from elements of, you know, Chinese industry still there, still supporting, you know, aping the Great Firewall, which clearly, you know, it protects information from getting into China to a large degree. It's quite interesting because I think that has ramifications for a lot of things, including, you know, the various ransomware gangs in Russia that may find their communication infrastructure not quite as amenable to attacking overseas targets as it has been in the past. So I think there's, you know, quite apart from the conflict, there are some really huge issues now in the cyber world that are going to run and run.
It's almost like Russia's attempts at disinformation have been really quite poor, and they've been debunked quite quickly. Russia's never really been that great at disinformation, has it? The fact is that people weren't very good at debunking it very quickly. Now they are. Now when fake pictures, videos, all of those sorts of things are going up, there's just lots and lots of people who are analysing them, who are geolocating them, who are proving that they're real. So that side of things, you know, they're not doing particularly well during Ukraine, and Ukraine has been absolutely brilliant at responding and putting the truth out there. Everybody's videoing it, and these videos are all being verified as being true. I mean, did you see Russia's very poor attempt at debunking one of Ukraine's real videos and saying it was fake? And everyone just was like, you know, it's so obviously fake, it's terrible.
So how do you distinguish between what's disinformation and what is misinformation?
Right, well, disinformation is propaganda. So it's what Russia's putting out there for people to consume and believe. Misinformation is where people are spreading the information, maybe unknowingly, between each other online. And that does happen a lot, because you see a picture and you might think, oh gosh, that's so shocking, and you just share it, you know, and you think this is terrible, I really have to share this, but you don't know that picture is real, which is the important thing that everybody is having to do now. You need to check pictures, and you can do things like, I wrote an article like a reverse image search in Google. It's so easy to do, and then you can work out for yourself where this image has come from. Is it new? Some of these images were posted 2 years ago. They're from completely different conflicts entirely. And if you can do that before you share something, then you're making a big difference to stop the misinformation, which is the thing that you are in control of.
I think, you know, if you talk to, you know, military strategists in the West, they'll talk about, you know, elements of hybrid warfare and how all of these various things come together. We've seen in the US and here in the UK, you know, looking at cyber and social media and how that is part of a campaign, be it offensive or defensive. What's really interesting about what we're seeing in Russia is just on the kinetic side and the intel side, on the disinformation side, it's not joined up. And, you know, there clearly isn't a strategy. It's clearly not working. It's quite hard to understand who the audience is, because we sit here and we look at what we see on Twitter or Facebook or whatever else, and we assume we're the audience for it. But I tell you, if you're in other parts of Eastern Europe, what you're seeing is terrifying you. Maybe that's the audience for it. And in which, you know, what I found really interesting about the Russian campaign is it's clearly, obviously, it's got to a stage, the kind of the presentation of it appears to be of little interest. They don't care. You know, you've seen what's happened. We're sitting here today in the aftermath of attacks on hospitals. They don't care, right? They are obviously, this is a fear and dread campaign. They're targeting, they're trying to terrify the civilian population. That has to be the conclusion you draw from this. In which case, the actual real information is doing the job of work. Yeah, the various elements of bots, whatever else, kind of throwing stuff in, half-hearted attempts to discredit stuff that's coming out. But if you take a step back, this is terrifying. It's, it's a guy with a finger on the button saying, what are you going to do? And that is coming across loud and clear. we don't need to kind of to address that message up, do we?
No, and I think possibly after all of this video doom scrolling, if you like, perhaps it would be good for us to finish on a slightly lighter note, although not really a point for amusement, which is Wordle. And Wordle clones. I mean, it's no surprise with the success of Wordle, and especially since it's been acquired by the New York Times, that people are looking at alternatives. But I've been looking at some research into these Wordle clones from the privacy perspective, the ad tracking perspective. And the top handful of apps, Wordle clone apps, have had 11.5 million downloads in this first 3 months of 2022 already. And some of the stats regarding their privacy side of things are quite extraordinary. That's the only word I can think, extraordinary. The researchers, privacy researchers, actually said that they found that they give advertisers access to what they call significant user data, such as IP address sharing, device fingerprinting. And one of the most popular of these apps was phoning home with a server request every second. Another one of the top apps was phoning home 70 times a minute, even if you hadn't given permission for ad tracking. And 2 of these top 10 apps, both on iOS, I hasten to add, 2 iOS apps didn't ask the required permission to allow ad tracking. They just went ahead and did it anyway. So I'm going to be digging into that report and seeing just how bad these Wordle clones are.
So Davey, what would be a 5-letter word for the people behind these apps?
I can think of a 6-letter word.
Really?